Well, good afternoon, everyone, and greetings from the Coast Guard Academy Admissions Office. We are here today to deliver another installment of our Coast Guard Academy Admissions Partner webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about postgraduate opportunities and postgraduate programs offered by the U.S. Coast Guard. This includes members or graduates of the Coast Guard Academy, but also any accession sources and available to any member of the Coast Guard. And those who come into officer session sources. So this is mainly for Coast Guard Academy admissions partners to go out and speak more intelligently on the topic to our recruits and those that we're trying to outreach with. But if you're a student or a parent watching this presentation as well, it'll offer lots of great insight and an opportunity to learn more about these postgraduate programs offered by the Coast Guard. So with that, let's get started. We're going to go over a quick overview here. I've got a guest introduction here with me today is Lieutenant Mike Person, and Mike will be talking in just a minute about his experience in Coast Guard postgraduate school. We'll talk about the types of programs offered, the different grad schools that you can attend, the process to qualify or gain acceptance to these programs, attending school, kind of what it's like as an active duty Coast Guard member, the payback that's involved, and then we're going to cover some success stories. So you have some ideas to take out there with you as far as who has actually done who's gone through these programs. And when we talk about these grad school opportunities, really we're talking about 80% of Coast Guard active duty officers who are attending these programs, and this is a requirement in many cases for some of those officers to promote past a certain level. So anyone you see at a certain rank, and it's typically at the commander, captain level of the Coast Guard, will oftentimes have a postgraduate school under the belt. So without further ado, I want to introduce Lieutenant Mike Person. And Mike, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Thank you, Alex. So I am a 2009 graduate from the United States Coast Guard Academy. Along with Alex, we were both marine environmental science majors. I decided to focus on two tracks, the chemistry and marine biology. And during that time, I had a great experience of getting out into the field and getting out on boats and touching fish and doing some chemistry. So it was fun. I also, I would say it is the best major. I also used the opportunity to get into research. I did some work on oil spill fingerprinting. This was before Deepwater Horizon happened and before there was a big push for oil spill research. But at that point in time, I was doing some weathering research, which I think is important when we're discussing graduate school because the Academy does give some unique opportunities for that research, which I think really helps in people getting accepted into programs. From graduation in 2009, I went to Coast Guard Cutter Diligence. I served as the assistant navigator and the support officer on board there, and you can see a beautiful picture here of the Coast Guard Cutter Diligence down in the Caribbean with the helicopter on the back. As well, I got to do some law enforcement training with some members from the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. So we were wielding some non-guns there, teaching them some tactical procedures, which was a lot of fun. Once I was done with that tour, I went to Coast Guard Sector St. Petersburg, Florida, where I served as a command duty officer and operations unit controller, where I focused primarily on search and rescue as well as incident management. And that incident management piece is pretty important as well because it helps drive home my further interest in oil spill because as the Federal On-Scene Coordinator representative, I was responsible for responding to all oil spills and hazardous material releases on the west coast of Florida. So that really helped my interest there. From there, I got accepted to graduate school. Finally, we're getting to that point. I went to the University of Pennsylvania for 2 years, and there I got a master's in organic and environmental chemistry, where I focused on the isolation and characterization of different biologically active molecules. And since that graduation, I came here to the Academy and have been serving as a chemistry instructor, rotating military faculty since.
Awesome. Have you enjoyed that so far?
It's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. I get to deal with all the incoming freshmen, so it's
excellent. Freshman courses, fun times here at CGA. So Mike offered a good insight into typical Coast Guard career path and when those grad school opportunities typically arise in their career path. And when would you say that oftentimes happens? You mentioned 2 tours operational before you got into grad school.
And that's what you'll normally see, Alex. There are some people, but they're few and far between, that will get that that graduate school experience right after the first tour. However, after recently talking to OPM, they like to see you get 2 operational tours under your belt before you go to graduate school. It helps to kind of put you into an operational expertise.
Awesome. So types of programs that exist out there, and Mike offered insight into one type of program that he was accepted for after applying through the Coast Guard process, but others include the Fulbright and Rhodes Scholars Program. Those are graduates here who get selected and picked up immediately for grad school opportunities, so they'll be sent to those grad programs from graduation. They will not report to a first unit. They'll go to grad school. They'll be a Coast Guard officer, and they'll be serving in the capacity of a student at that time. There are full-time or part-time graduate school opportunities. Mike's experience was full-time?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so full-time. And then there are part-time graduate school opportunities, meaning the member finds the time in their own schedule, oftentimes when they're associated or attached to a land-based unit, somewhere that's not with an underway schedule, where they can attend school part-time, usually taking only 1 or 2 classes, so 3 or 4 credits, as they work towards their 33 credit minimum requirement for that master's program. There are work college experiences as well. So the Air War College, Army War College, and Naval War College. I'm a graduate myself of the Naval War College. It took me 3 years to complete that program. I attended in Newport, Rhode Island. You graduate from that program with a Bachelor's of Arts in Homeland Security and Strategic Studies. That can also read Homeland Defense and Strategic Studies, so it just depends on which one you want on your grad certificate. But those work college opportunities are fantastic. They really expand your perspective on the world and how the United States and the United States military organizations fit into that structure. It really kind of gave me a better appreciation for everything that goes into the policy, the strategic, and the operational level of running our military. So that is another option as well. And the work colleges are free of charge. There's no payback requirement there, and there's nothing to pay as far as tuition, except for in the cases where you may go outside of the war college system to get certain elective credits accomplished. So I went to the online program. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's the online military school. So I went to an online military program where I paid, I think, a maximum of about $1,000 to accomplish 2 elective opportunities before earning that degree. And then the next one down the list here is the Inter-Service Physician's Assistant Program, the IPAP. This is a relatively new program. Only in the last few years has the Coast Guard started to offer this for those interested in the medical career path. So you might interact with a lot of students out there who say, hey, what opportunities are there available for me to become a medical doctor? Well, the Coast Guard can't necessarily send you to become a medical doctor, but we are looking into those opportunities. But at the moment, the best the Coast Guard is able to offer is this Physician's Assistant Program, and it will best serve you if you were to attend the Coast Guard Academy as a Marine and Environmental Science major.
I will add on something about that. We have recently retooled the major for Marine and Environmental Science, and we have now developed 3 different concentrations, and one of those concentrations does have a particular focus on this physician's assistance program. And so we have taken it to heart, and we like to look at the kind of the pipeline for the physician's assistants that are going out into the field, and we make some really great candidates for the program.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think when I came through, it was your organic chemistry, physical chemistry, basic chem, your biologies, macro and micro, anatomy, physiology, toxicology. Those were kind of in the ballpark of this program, but I'm sure they've developed that since then.
They've added on to the toxicology as well as a bit of biochemistry. So
great.
We are helping out with that program.
Another program is the law school opportunity. So if you ever wanted to be a lawyer, you can actually apply for the Coast Guard law programs, and if you picked up, attend law school for free, paid for by the Coast Guard. It's absolutely best deal out there for those attending law school. They go through that program at the institution they're accepted to. The Coast Guard pays, and then their payback is as a JAG. So then they become a staff judge advocate for the Coast Guard. The GI Bill is one of those last opportunities out there available to Academy graduates. The post 9/11 GI Bill allows for students to attend grad school after earning their GI Bill, which requires 3 years of active service. You can transfer that GI Bill to a dependent. That does take additional, I believe, 5 years of service. So you have to initiate that transfer and then serve 5 years for it to then go to another dependent.
If I can just add one more thing, Alex.
Absolutely.
So I also did a part-time graduate school online. What really helps out, you can talk to them as well about looking at yellow ribbon schools. They're severely reduced in price, and they help kind of match closer to what our tuition assistance provides. And the final thing is, any one of these programs will provide you an advanced education and then normally a payback tour associated with it. But they never preclude you from getting back to the operational fleet as well. You can go into law school. There's still lawyers that serve their payback, but then get back into the operational community if that's what they want.
Cool. Great point. All right. So the types of programs out there are far and vast. They cover a lot of the specialties required to operate this Coast Guard. So we need folks to have these expertise, to have these specialties. They fit into our officer specialty codes. They fit into those operational and specialty communities. So you can see up here on the screen, it ranges everything from contract management and business to electrical engineering to law to maritime and marine affairs to public administration to naval engineering. The list goes on and on. So if you are a student who looks at our undergraduate programs and says, ooh, I'm not so sure where I see my intended career path, well, look beyond that. Look into the grad opportunities. Use the undergraduate experience as a way to assess into the Coast Guard as an officer, and the postgraduate opportunity to establish and develop your specialty off of your foundation grown here at CGA. I don't know if you have anything to add to this.
Just to the last point there where it says all free to attend, there's another big caveat to that is that they're all free, but you're also collecting a paycheck as well.
Very good point. Yeah, so you're the richest grad school students alive out there. Yeah. Tuition's covered, your housing is covered, and your basic allowance or your basic paycheck is provided to you as well. Great point. So types of those grad schools, and Mike, the school you attended again?
Was University of Pennsylvania.
Perfect. So there are many different types of grad schools out there available, and you'll see some of the success stories here in a little bit. Ivy League schools are available. One of the success stories you'll see in a little bit was an Ivy League story. State schools, universities, law school programs, online programs, the war colleges, and international programs are all part of this graduate school, postgraduate opportunity. So I know if you want to have, just throwing the name out there, Harvard on a graduate certificate of yours, this is your opportunity to have that accomplished and paid for by the Coast Guard. So the process to gain entry into the postgraduate opportunity, and Mike might fill in some of the gaps here for me. To gain access, you have to first get your undergraduate transcript. So you're going to contact the registrar's office here at the Coast Guard Academy and ask for that transcript. Attached to that transcript, funny enough, because I've recently asked for mine, is a letter that essentially states the uniqueness and specialty of this institution. So some folks might say, hey, I see your GPA is a little bit lower than the standard student. Well, in many cases, it's for good reason. We require students to do a certain number of community service hours and athletics participation and military obligation and a certain number of course load, credit loads, so that they're completing in 4 years what other students are taking 6 to accomplish. So that's the first step. Then you take your GRE, GMAT, LSAT. Then once you have those scores in your undergrad transcript, you can look into the Coast Guard Graduate School solicitation when that comes out. Now that comes out in a Coast Guard message. So the Coast Guard will put out there a message that says these grad schools are now open to apply for, put your name in the hat, and then a board meets on those assembled by the Coast Guard to select those students who will be going to the grad school opportunities. Once accepted by the Coast Guard, you then apply to the school of your choice. It includes those yellow ribbon schools, but pretty much any program in the country. There might be exceptions. Yeah,
there are some programs out there that do have a good rapport, or they prefer different types of or a specific type of school that they want you to go to. But for the most part, you can choose whatever school you like to, as long as it's under a certain threshold.
You then get your grad school orders. So the Coast Guard cuts you PCS or permanent change of station orders, and you attend that school, and that's your only obligation. It's free to attend, paid for by the Coast Guard, and your only obligation is to go to school, to get good grades, and graduate. And then once you graduate, you're going to report back for your payback. Now, once you're in the program, And Mike might speak a little bit on this as well. You're attending class. You periodically, depending upon where you live or who you're assigned to as far as a local Coast Guard office, you may need to check in for medical training purposes or personnel needs, but you get to enjoy some relaxed grooming standards. And then really your only goal is to graduate. So I don't know, Mike, if you have anything to fill in.
Yeah, so we were starting our family at that point in time, so I had about a newborn when I was right in the middle of it, so I wasn't doing as much partying as they like to do at normal graduate school. But as I mentioned earlier, and Alex referenced, is you're not really the normal graduate student because you are getting that paycheck to go along with it. But you do every once in a while have to report into medical and training, but that's dependent on where you're located. Some of those more isolated duty stations in the center of the country may not actually have a place to report into. But yeah, just graduate on time.
There you go. All right, the payback. So of course we all understand the undergraduate payback or your accession source payback. In most accession sources is that 5 years. For Coast Guard Academy it is 5 years. And then for your grad school payback, it's 3 years for your first year of school. So some programs you can finish in 1 year, and you then only have a 3-year payback. Now, most payback tours are designed to be a 4-year payback, but you really only owe those 3 to the Coast Guard. And then 1 year for every other year, for every consecutive year of grad school you attend after that. So for a typical 2-year program, you would include a 4-year payback. Law school payback is 5 years. Flight school, to put things in perspective, is 8. I see Pat Prado is typing a message. So Pat, if you have a question, we're happy to answer that for you. The physician's assistant program payback is 4 years, 5 months. I know that's an odd number there, but that's what they list. And then graduate school time does count towards your accession payback. So if you get into your grad school program while still owing that 5 years for your accession source payback, that will count towards burning down that 5 years. All right. So we're going to get into a couple of success stories here, the last couple slides. And before we do that, we have a question here from Pat. Must you complete ongoing tour of duty before applying for a grad program? So can you apply to a grad program in the middle of a tour?
No, you can't. You have to be tour complete by the time that you apply for the grad program. There is one, I guess not, yeah, it's a caveat. If you receive a commanding officer position, so if you're rotating and you get selected for a commanding officer position, the cutter or any other unit, you can, and you also get picked up for graduate school, you can delay graduate school in lieu of your commanding position. So, and that puts you on a 2-year hiatus, and then you come back to that opportunity 2 years later.
Perfect. So some success stories that are near and dear to our hearts, because these are either adjacent classes or classmates of ours. The first year, Christopher Linden of Portland, Oregon. So if Mr. Linden watches this or Chris watches in the future, surprise, you're being captured here for eternity online. But you're a 2008 grad, got his Bachelor of Science in Marine and Environmental Science, went into a float operations career, and then attended Scripps Institution of Oceanographic Institute over in California, earning his master's in oceanography in 2014 with a research focusing in passive acoustics, so doing acoustic array, similar to what the submarines out there are working on. And then Lieutenant Berlinden started teaching here at CGA in the MES building, Marine and Environmental Science building, and then completed his PhD at Scripps Institution of Oceanography in 2017. He recently got out as a contractor, is very happy doing the work that he's doing now, but all funded and fueled by the Coast Guard graduate school program. So if folks are listening to us still, we're going to continue on to Lieutenant Dana Doherty. So Dana is our classmate and used to be Dana Tomps. So Dana is a 2009 graduate, was an operations research computer analysis major here, and then went on to earn her MA in mathematics from Harvard University in 2016 to begin teaching mathematics here at the Coast Guard Academy. So Dana is doing tremendous work here at the Coast Guard Academy and is another 2009 member teaching here. And then our last 2009 member, Lieutenant Luis Garcia, currently teaching in the civil engineering department here on campus, was a 2009 graduate, Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, assigned to a Coast Guard cutter out of the academy, but then later went on to attend the University of Texas in Austin, where he earned his Master's of Science in Civil Engineering and was subsequently assigned here as one of the faculty members. So these are 3 success stories, and Mike is a 4th of all those folks out there who have gone through this grad program, grad opportunity. So I think they're really great examples for other students to follow, and for you to get additional information on what a typical kind of career path, career progression looks like into a grad program. And for those interested, if you'd like to learn more online about our grad programs, if you go to uscga.edu and go to the academics dropdown, you'll see Coast Guard Academy graduate programs. It has more information here, a list of graduate school programs, and then of course you can always contact the admissions officers or our staff if you'd like to learn more. And that is all we have for today's presentation. At this time, we'd be happy to open up the floor to any questions. So if you'd like to, please use that thought bubble in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Type in any questions that you have there. And either Mike or myself will be able to answer those for you. So we'll give everybody just a couple minutes. But Mike, I appreciate you coming in today and just talking to folks about your years going through the grad program in Pennsylvania. Where kind of do you see yourself taking your career next?
So right now I'm serving as a rotating military faculty member, but there are opportunities for permanent time here at the academy, and I'd like to, one of those positions is going to be opening up in the next year or two, so I'd like to make sure that I apply for that, because it's a great opportunity to come in here to teach. I really love it, and the opportunity to stay here for the rest of my career would be a lot of fun, and to get a free PhD out of it as well, so talking additional follow-on graduate school programs.
What does, so even the PhD would accrue a 1, 3, 4-year payback?
It actually does not. So you actually sign your contract and you're just a permanent faculty member until retirement.
Working towards your PhD.
Yes.
Understood.
Yeah,
okay. Right. And then so one of the questions we got here is flight school considered a graduate school? So most pilots who go through flight school, the flight training they receive becomes their specialty career path. So in many cases, it would be somewhat considered a graduate school, but many pilots go on to earn their master's degree, postgraduate opportunity, or attend their postgraduate opportunity. It's not something that kind of stops that opportunity for you, no. Now, by the time you graduate flight training, that training alone, combined with your undergrad opportunity, is worth about $1 million worth of training. But the Coast Guard is still willing to put more money towards your education and your training later on. Do you have something to fill in there?
I work with an aviator as well. So he's a lieutenant commander that just made commander. So he's been in for about 17 years now. And so he not only had flight school paid for, he also had the opportunity to go to graduate school and is now teaching here and just got picked up for a full-time instructor position.
Perfect. Great question. So without any other questions, I want to again thank Mike thank you for being here today to talk to our admissions partners. I don't know if Ms. Clayton might have one more follow-up before we log off today, but we're nearing our 30-minute mark here in the presentation. We want to thank everyone for being online today. Please provide us information, feedback, and further follow-up or further questions. Or if you have ideas for other webinar series, we'd like to host those in the future or bring on other guests. So thank you everyone for participating today. With that, I will give us a hearty go Bears and log off. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing everyone and speaking to you soon.